Hello my students, hello my subscribers of my channel or your channel, Doctors of the Future. I hope for all of you good health and good states. I'm very interesting and happy to return to you in this new video. I hope for all of you good health and good states. Now we in sequence of anatomy. Now we will explain about the skeletal system. Skeletal system, we will start in the skull. I think this is very obvious. If the background is white, I think this not very obvious. But if background is black, I think this very obvious for you, right? Okay. Now we will explain the skull, especially the cranium, the part of the skull, bone. Now all this called frontal. All this called frontal. That means in the front of the forehead here. This found in it, number one, the eyebrow, also the forehead, also part of the hair of the human hair. This as cosmetic or obvious for any people, but as medically found here the sinus here, found sinus here and found sinus here, and also all this called frontal bone. This is called frontal bone. The frontal bone is one of the flattened irregular bones that make up the clavaria. The clavaria, the superior part of the cranium, also include the occipital, parietal, and temporal bones. The bones of the cranium used to enclose and protect the brain. This I explained it in the previous video, that protect the brain, which bones protect the brain and which bones protect the brain and the face of the human body. The frontal bone forms the forehead, and I am just explain this forehead is here. From the forehead and the superior regions of the orbits, it consists of two portions. The squama, a vertical portion that contains air-filled space called the frontal sinuses. So I explained it previously I said the sinus here. The frontal bone articulates with 12 other bones, the sphenoid, the ethmoid, and the two parietal bones, the two nasal bones, the two maxilla, maxilla, the two lacrimal bones, and the two zygomatic bones. Now we will explain another part of the cranium. This is called
sphenoid.
This is sphenoid. I will explain it for all of you. The sphenoid bone is right and left, is the keystone bone at the base of the neurocranium in front of the temporal bone and the basilar part of the occipital bone. The sphenoid articulates with 12 bones: the vomer, ethmoid, frontal, and occipital, and the parietal, temporal, zygomatic, and palatine bones. The sphenoid somewhat resembles a bat with its wings extended. The sphenoid is divided into a medium body, two greater wings, two lesser wings that extend outward from the side of the body, and two pterygoid processes that project inferiorly from where the great wings and body meet. The body contains two sphenoidal sinuses, or air cells. That are separated from each other by septum. Parts of the wings participate in the formation of the orbits and contain several important foramen containing the pituitary gland. This is called sphenoid.
Sphenoid.
Now we'll explain the temporal bone. This is called temporal.
Temporal. Temporal. Temporal.
So the temporal bone is here. The temporal bone, right, left, are two of the flattened irregular bones that make up the clavaria. The clavaria is the superior part of the cranium and it includes occipital, frontal, and parietal right-left bones. The bones of the cranium fuse to include the protect the brain, the temporal bones from the sides and base of the skull. Each temporal bone consists of five parts. Number one, the thin translucent squama, which forms the anterior and superior parts of the bone. Number two, the petrous part, a pyramid-shaped structure between the sphenoid and the occipital bones, which contains the auditory, osculars, and additional internal organs of hearing and equilibrium. Number three, the mastoid portion, which forms the posterior part of the bone and contains the mastoid process, which serves as attachment for the muscle of the neck. Number four, the tympanic part, a curved plate of bone lying below the squama and in front of the mastoid process, which contains the external auditory foramen. And five, finally, the styloid process, a cylinder pointed projection on the inferior surface that serves as an anchor point for several ligaments and muscles. This called occipital.
Occipital.
This occipital bone here.
Occipital.
This occipital behind of the cranium. This is the cranium from the front of, and this the cranium from the behind. This called occipital.
Occipital.
This occipital will explain it. The occipital bone is one of the flattened irregular bones that make up the clavaria. The clavaria is the superior part of the cranium. Also include the parietal, right, left, frontal, and temporal bones. The bones of the cranium used to enclose the protect the brain. The occipital bones is the base of the skull. So the base of the skull, this is skull, the base of it here is occipital bone. So the occipital bone is the base of the skull and from the posterior and inferior part of the cranium. Because now here this called the posterior part of the cranium and this called inferior part of the cranium. It includes a large aperture, the foramen magnum, this called foramen magnum, through which the cranial cavity communicates with the vertebral canal. Now this will connect to the vertebral canal. The occipital bone, I mean foramen magnum, through which the cranial cavity communicates with the vertebral canal. From which this foramen magnum, the cranial cavity here, this cranial cavity from here, this is the foramen magnum here. This here. This is foramen magnum here. And from this cranium of the brain connect through foramen magnum here to make a vertebra of the neck or cervical. So the occipital bone is at the base of the skull and from the posterior and inferior part of the cranium. It includes large aperture, the foramen magnum, through which the cranial cavity communicates with the vertebral canal. The occipital bone is supported by the vertebral column and articulates with the atlas in a way that allows for rotation of the head. So rotation of the head, like here, just you said no, you make this. Are you love the heating? Are you love the winter? Are you love the summer? So what do you love? Okay, so in this way, when you rotate the head, who's the responsible about that? So vertebral column supported by what? The occipital bone supported by the vertebral column that articulates with the atlas in a way that allows for rotation of the head. The occipital bone has sequamal, basilar, and lateral portions. The sequama is curved, extended plate-shaped portion behind the foramen magnum. It curves downward and from side to side. The basilar part is a thick quadrilateral piece in front of the foramen magnum. It extends forward and upward to fuse with the sphenoid. The lateral portions on either side of the foramen magnum have condyles projecting downward for articulation with the superior face of the atlas. So this occipital bone, the behind of the skull, just upward for the neck, because here we'll found the neck. So this is found here, hair of your head. Okay. Now we will explain about this. This is called parietal.
Parietal.
This parietal bone is here on the left and is here on the right. Now I will want to explain something. All bones of the cranium is found in the right and the left is the same bones. For an example, this is a sphenoid, this is a temporal, this is a parietal. So in this direction, in the right, also the temporal, also the sphenoid, also the parietal. So in the right and in the left is the same bones names, okay? But found in it double. Do in the right and the left, temporal, temporal right, temporal left, sphenoid, sphenoid right, sphenoid left, okay? Parietal, parietal right, parietal left, okay? So same bones found in both sides, same names of bones found in both sides, same names of bones found in both sides of the cranium. This parietal bone is here. The parietal bone is here. You can put your hand here on the forward and make 3 to 4 fingers. After that, this is the parietal here. Is the hair of your head is here very more obvious. The parietal bone, right and left. Okay, you see my students, right and left, as I said just. So the parietal bones, right and left, are two of the flattened irregular bones that make up the clavera. The clavera is the superior part of the cranium, also includes the occipital, frontal, and temporal bones. The bones of the cranium used to enclose the protect the brain. The parietal bones are two of the largest bones of the skull. So, if you have an exam and in exam found a question, say, what the largest bones in the skull? So the parietal, the best answer is the parietal, because the parietal bones are two of the largest bones in the skull. They form the sides and roof of the neurocranium. Each parietal is irregularly quadrilateral in form and articles with 5 bones. The opposite parietal, the occipital, the frontal, and the temporal, and the sphenoid. So this is structures of the bone. This, and this. So this 1, this 2, this 3, this 4. All them surrounding the parietal here. So this is the parts of the skull, of the cranium. This is the auditory canal here.
External auditory meatus.
Okay, this is external auditory meatus here. All this is sphenoid. I will see you. Okay, this is the sphenoid. All this from the interior. This is sphenoid.
Sphenoid.
So from the out, you see the sphenoid is this only. My student, give me your attention, please. From the side or from the outward, when you see the sphenoid, you thinking this only. But in actually, the sphenoid is all this from the interior. All this is sphenoid. Okay? Now we will come to explain about the skull. This called maxilla.
Maxilla.
This maxilla,
Maxilla.
sorry,
Maxilla.
this maxilla is here, and this maxilla also is here. This is right.
Maxilla.
This called mandible.
Mandible.
This mandible, all this mandible.
Mental foramen. Mental foramen. Mental foramen.
So, this is this mandible, and this called maxilla.
Maxilla.
The maxilla are two of the 14 facial bones. The facial bones articulate with the bones of the cranium, neurocranium, and together form the skull. And I explained this in the previous video, the previous lesson. I explained all this. The maxilla form the upper jaw and the boundaries of three cavities: the roof of the oral cavity, the floor and lateral wall of the nasal cavity, and the floors of the orbits. The triangular zygomatic process found the junction of the interior superior and orbital surfaces articulates with the zygomatic bone. The anterior surface is directed forward and laterally, with series of inferior eminences corresponding to the positions of the roots of the teeth, connecting the two rows of teeth anteriorly in the palatine process. Okay. So this is the teeth, you know, this you can upper arch and teeth as general. It's from behind, okay? So this is as general the skull. I hope the explanation was well for all of you, and I hope also my explanation was well and properly to you. Thank you for listening to this video. Thank you very much.